We're going to be concluding our series, Bless This House, this morning. It's been a great series. We've received a lot of great feedback. I know that Mum and Dad have as well, that they've loved doing this series, but they've really loved the response that everyone's given. You guys have really leaned in and just taken it by the horns, so we're really appreciative, and we really hope that you are blessed by some things that we get to bring today, because, you've heard about the marriages and you've heard from the parents. You've heard what a great series this has been. And today you will hear if it's actually true. Yes, because they say a lot up here. But we're the ones who had to live in the house that Mum and Dad created. And we had to live by these rules that they've been telling you all about. So we know if they actually work. But obviously, we want to preface by saying, look, no family is perfect. No parents are perfect. We know that. We're not up here trying to state that we are a perfect family, or by any means, we're definitely not. But looking back, we recognize that there are many things that our parents did that have set us up well for life and have shaped who we are today as adults, as partners, as workers. We wouldn't be where we are without Mum and Dad putting in the hard yards all those years ago, and we're really grateful. So today, we wanted to highlight just a few of the things that have impacted our lives and helped shape us as these people. So you ready? Yes, great. Have you got your notes out? Good. Some of you are going to heaven. Good. I've got my notes out, so I'll be there with you. But today, my first point is just looking at how they built a foundation of responsibility for us. So from an early age, they taught us how to work and how to serve willingly. You see, whether it was chores at home or serving at church, we learned early that contribution wasn't optional, but it was part of being in the family. See, at the time, it felt really normal for us, but looking back, I see that this was actually intentional by Mum and Dad and the environment that they created for us. Because they taught us how to work hard, how to be reliable, and how to understand that responsibility is not something to avoid, but something that helps us grow. I think of when I was looking at getting my first job, when I was a lot younger, things that I had learnt by doing chores in the house or by serving here at church, they really helped. They helped me not to be a better worker myself, but they helped me stand out apart from other workers. My sister and I worked at the same restaurant for a while. She was there before me, and she did so well that they didn't even interview me, I'm going to be honest. They just saw that I was like a rainbow, and they're like, you're hired. So older siblings pave the way for your younger siblings. It's a rite of passage. And younger siblings live up to the expectations that they set, because if you don't, you'll hear about it. But we worked at this little restaurant. It was great. It was really fun. And my boss absolutely loved Jordan and I. And I can't help but think it wasn't really because of anything I had done. It was just so natural because of what Mum and Dad had taught us from such a young age. We were just, doing what we'd been told to do for so many years. I was doing all my normal chores at home, but just getting paid for it. I was like, this is great. This is a win-win. But I think of things that they taught us. Serving at church taught me time management and punctuality. I remember doing chores at home. It was always, do it the cheerful way. If you're not doing it with a smile, it doesn't count. And at work, I was just the smiley person. Everyone knew me. That was me, at work. Everyone was like, can you smile like Bailey's smiling, please? Because you all look like you don't want to be here. So, and I knew, I was like, if I didn't smile while making my lunch in the morning, I was going to hear about it from Cathis. So these are things that were just so normal at home, and we didn't question it then, but looking back, I see how that has actually really helped us outside of home as well, and even at church. Smile when you're serving on church. I'd learned how to use till machines at church, how to serve people coffee, how to make coffees, all these things that have helped me outside of the church. I learned here, I learned with my parents, my older sister correcting me along the way, all these things, really helpful lessons that don't have to remain at home, but they do start there, parents. And I'm so grateful for that. You see, the goal isn't that isn't that the children remain in home, is that you create a great family and they just stay together. I know that you guys want to send them out into the real world. You want to raise them well so that they can thrive as adults, but it starts in the home. So I'm really grateful that my parents built a foundation of responsibility and taught us what it is to work hard and to work well and to work cheerfully. So not only that, but they also let us be kids before anything else. And this is really important because we grew up in a ministry family. We grew up at church. We're there every Sunday, every Friday night for youth. But we never felt like we had to become ministers before we could just be children. And I'm so grateful for that. See, the term pastor's kid has been thrown around a lot, but we didn't really grow up with that title. Mum and Dad didn't want to put that pressure on us of what that name can bring. It wasn't until I was like in my teenage years that some of my friends started using that. I was like, oh, I'm just like a kid who goes to church. I don't really know what that is, but I realize now why they did that, and that's because they were protecting us and they were letting us be children in the house of the Lord. And I'm so grateful that they did that because they gave us room to grow and room to learn, room to make mistakes, and room to discover who God had created us to be. They didn't put anything on us. They gave us the freedom and the room to figure it out for ourselves, and they helped guide us along the way. Because ultimately their goal wasn't to produce perfect church kids. Their goal was to raise a healthy people and a healthy family who love Jesus. And this is evidenced by the fact that we're still here today. I know a lot of pastors' kids, and I'm friends with a lot of pastors' kids who aren't in church anymore, or who just don't go that regularly or aren't serving. But I think there's something that stands out, that we're still in church, and we're not just attending, we're thriving, we're serving cheerfully, weekly. And that can all be whittled down to the fact that my parents let us be kids and they protected our childhood before we had to be anything else for the church. So we've grown up to be people who love God and who love his house. We don't have an issue with God himself. We don't have an issue with the church and the people that are in it. We love him and we love his house and we're committed to building it. And I can just only point that back to what Mum and Dad did when we were really little. And I'm really grateful for that. All right, thirdly, they led us through different seasons. You would have heard Dad talk about the other week the different stages of parenting. So in the early stages, like your 0 to 10s is like your commander stage. And then the early teens, that's your teenage years, that's the coaching stage. And then as they become young adults and start moving out, get married, all of that, that's your consultant stage. So my parents have gone through kind of all of these stages with all of us different kids, and we all receive it differently because we are different. Yeah. And I know for me, one stage is a lot easier than the stage that was for Jordan. So I've seen how they've tackled that with each of us differently. And it's cool because while their approach may be different, while different areas might be focused on, they have the same patterns and the same results for all of us. So I know, like, if I'm honest, I preferred the commander stage when I was younger because it's way easier to just be told what to do than to, like, have to figure it out. Is there anyone else like that? I'm like, I prefer just tell me what to do. I don't want to have to make a decision. I don't want to have to think about it. I'll just do it. Even if I don't like it, I'd rather just be told and I'll do it. But, you know, my parents recognized that that wasn't going to get me very far in life, and that ultimately I had to learn how to make decisions for myself. So they helped me at home from an early age learn how to do that. And I just think even when deciding on whether or not to come to Melbourne, again, I was like, I kind of wish I was like 11, so I just had to come with them, and they just like had to move, like I had to do all the things, move schools, and I had no say. And then I could be like, oh, Mum and Dad made me move. Oh, I could like play that card, but like at least I didn't make the decision, you know. But I was not. I was 18 and an adult, so they were like, well, You get to make this decision yourself. What are you going to do? And they knew that if they didn't help coach me, I would be left just staying there because I would have been left in indecision. And ultimately, Dad always says, indecision is the worst decision because you haven't really decided anything and you're going to be unhappy no matter what happens because you've had no say, and ultimately you're just going to be left miserable. And Dad saw that I could be crippled by this indecision if left unattended, if left, unworked out. So is still working with me, but on being able to make decisions. And it's not just, okay, what do you want to do? Go. He'll ask me questions. Okay, well, what do you like about this decision? What do you like about that one? What's here? What's there? What's this? He'd ask me questions. He'd show me wisdom, even pointing to the Bible to give me comfort and peace about different situations. While I wasn't left to just make the decision alone, it was still my decision to make. And that was really powerful for me to learn because I knew that I couldn't just remain where I was growing up. It wouldn't serve me at all to be the person who can never make a decision later on. They made a really hard choice early on to help me much later on. And now, looking back, as annoying as it was at the time, I'm so grateful because I get to be here in Melbourne knowing I wasn't forced here or I'm not missing out on anything. I know that I made this decision and I can rest in it peacefully. And whenever a tough time comes, I know, hey, I made this decision and I know why. It wasn't just just eeny, meeny, miny, okay, chose one. He helped me craft a why and he helped me understand the decisions I made as well. So that when tough times do come or when good times come, I recognize, okay, this is why. This is why I chose this. I'm so grateful for that. But I recognize it would have been hard for Dad. I'm sure at times it would have been easier for him to just tell me what to do. I know for parents that would be a lot easier if you could just tell your kids what to do all the time and they listen. That'd be great. So, and I'm sure sometimes when Dad would sit down with me, okay, you got to make a decision. And I'm sitting there I'm sure he would have just been like, oh, okay, just do this. I know that would have been easier for him if he was just like, okay, forget it. Just do that one. But he made the sacrifice of teaching me how to make a decision because he recognized in the long run that was so much better off for him and for me. Because if I was middle-aged and he's still helping me make decisions, that's not cool. That's not good. You don't want that. No one wants that. So parents, if you have kids like me and it's really tough, keep pushing through. Coach them in how to make decisions. Ask them good questions. Show them wisdom that you have from your years or wisdom from the Bible, wisdom from other people. Help them in making those decisions. And parents, if you have kids that are really strong-minded and, probably need to listen more, less than make those decisions, talk to Jordan. I don't know how to help you with that one, but that was Jordan's area. She hated the commander stage. But regardless of what stage is easier for them, it doesn't mean you just skip out on it if it's really hard. Because they're all necessary, they're all helpful, and they'll thank you for it later. So they led us through different seasons. And fourthly, they held their line even when it wasn't easy. Like I said before, I know there would have been times for Dad when, okay, make a decision, no, I'm going to help you, I'm not going to do it for you. I know that would have gotten harder and harder the longer I took to answer or the more I threw in there. Or when I would make a decision and then change it a few seconds later, I know he would have just been like, oh my goodness, I'll just choose. I know that wasn't easy. But they did it anyway. See, as children, we mostly see the rules, but as adults, we begin to see the sacrifices that they made. Now, we recognize that many of the values they enforced weren't always easy. And some of these decisions probably cost them popularity and convenience and comfort. But they recognized the greatest sacrifice. See, Dad talked about when we would forget our lunch or our jackets last week. And can attest, I have done that many a time. I did that in school. He wasn't making that up. That is very true. And he also wasn't making up that they would not drop it off. That was also very true. And I know maybe it's just because I'm the empath in the family like they always talk about, but I know that that would have been hard for them to like sit at work knowing, oh, Bailey forgot her lunch. She's going hungry. I know Mum would have been sitting there like, don't pick up the phone, don't pick up the phone, don't do it, don't rescue her. I know it would have been hard because no parent wants their kid going hungry or going cold or, you know, especially when they could fix it. They're like, oh, if I could do it though, I could do it. But they recognized the greater sacrifice that was there. They were willing to endure temporary frustration because they were focused on the long-term fruit. And while I may have been hungry at the time, while I may have been cold at the time and unappreciative at the time, I'm so glad they never rescued me now because it's helped me. You know, I can tell you, if you get your lunch once, you don't ever do it again. I was so hungry that day. And it was fun for no one. None of my teachers, none of my classmates. Like, you don't forget. You're like, okay, did that once, never again. And every other day, I'd take my lunch. You forget your jacket once, and you're freezing. You don't do it again. You learn through the exposure. And I'm really glad that they didn't, you know, shelter us off from that and deny me an opportunity to learn something for myself, even though at the time it would have been really annoying. So for kids, if you're in that situation where they're not going to drop you your lunch or your jacket, or it's something like that where you wish your parents would just rescue you, be grateful because when you're older, it's way harder to learn those lessons. Be grateful you have parents who are willing to help you learn them now. Sorry. Like I said, they helped us They helped us by not, sorry, I've totally lost my train of thought. I was just thinking about lunch and I just like totally, like, I got too far ahead of myself. No, but they helped us learn through this exposure and they helped us understand the why. You know, it wasn't just like, oh, my parents won't drop me lunch because they don't love me. That's not true. And if I ever said that to like try it, I was never saying that again. Like, my mum would have shut that down really quickly, and I would have limped away from that conversation. But no, they helped us understand, like, oh, no, this is going to help you in your future, and this is so much better for you. And now I can stand here in retrospect saying, yeah, it did. Thank you, Mum. Thank you, Dad. So be thankful, children, even if it's annoying at times. But those are just like 4 observations that I took away from this and from growing up in the Rainbow household. But while that might be all from me, we're not done for this morning. I'm going to hand over to Nathaniel, and he's going to move into a bit of a different stage. So please clap your hands, welcome him up. He's going to continue our series.
Thank you, Bailey. I tell you what, everything that Bailey shared is definitely true. And coming into the Rainbow family, I was 17. I just started dating Jordan. And I always got the question of, what is it like dating a pastor's daughter? But more specifically, they asked, what is it like dating Pastor Tony's daughter? And I'm like, that's a great question. But the truth is, Pastor Tony isn't scary. It's Kath you need to watch out for. She's the scary one. But all joking aside, it was an absolute privilege to be part of the Rainbow family. And I came from a Christian home, a Christ-centered home, and my parents, I love them so much. And they laid so many great foundations that I was able to build upon and build on that would help me in my marriage. And I think a lot of those lessons I learned through the church and through Pastor Tony and Pastor Kath as being part of their church and part of their family. They imparted so much wisdom and guidance, and we were part of so many conversations that helped us lay a foundation for marriage. So this morning, I want to share with you a few of their foundational things that Jordan and I learned that were able to set the foundation for our marriage. You see, when Jordan and I started dating, we quickly realized that there are lots of good examples and there are lots of bad examples. We started dating in high school. So we had lots of friends and peers that were dating in relationships. And from the get-go, we realized we didn't want this just to be a fling. We didn't want it to be something that could just fill our weekends and have someone to do fun stuff with. We actually wanted to be intentional with our dating. So the first thing I'm going to speak about is we learn to date on purpose. But before I break down these points, I just want to speak, probably there's roughly two groups in the room. There's the kids and the parents, or the adults in a parenting role. And for the kids in the room, you might be dating, you might be looking to start dating. And I would encourage you, maybe some of these things that you're not doing in your relationships or you are doing, but I'd encourage you to really have a think about how you could implement these in your relationship. And for the parents, I'm not a parent yet, so I can't speak from a parent's perspective, but I can speak from the perspective of a recipient of that, of parents who had these conversations with us, who instilled these values, who taught us these lessons so that we could enter into a marriage, enter into a relationship with strong foundations. So my first point, we learned to date on purpose. You see, we were taught not to waste our dating. You see, from the beginning, we knew that we wanted to date with intention, and we saw plenty of examples of the good and the bad. And because we wanted to date with that intentionality of looking to get married, we decided to set some healthy boundaries. And I guess boundaries, when you hear them in church, a lot of non-believers, they think, oh, they're just restrictions. They're things that the Christians put in place to be boring and not have fun. But you see, boundaries aren't about restriction, they're about protection. See, they helped us build a relationship based on trust, respect, shared values, and not just the physical intimacy. And for Jordan and I, one of these boundaries that we set for ourselves was never to be home alone together. And if we were home together with the family, we would never just hang out in each other's bedrooms. You see, Pastor Tony was really big on why try to resist temptation when you can just implement some wisdom to avoid it entirely. And you see, Jordan and I, we carried that mantra, that biblical wisdom all throughout our relationship. And we thought, why put ourselves in situations that we're going to have to try real hard not to do something we didn't want to find ourselves doing, when we could just avoid that environment, avoid having to make that decision entirely. And I think I was so appreciative of that, because there's so many instances and so many stories where people get themselves into situations that they didn't intend to, but they just happened to find themselves in situations that led from one thing to another. But for Jordan and I, we had Pastor Tony and our parents that really spoke into that and held us accountable and explained why these boundaries were helpful, because they weren't just restrictions, but they were protections to help us build a relationship based on trust, respect, and shared values. And because we were able to implement these boundaries, because we wanted to date with purpose, it allowed us to learn how to have real conversations. You see, because we weren't distracted with everything else, we learned how to talk. And we discussed lots of things throughout our dating season, and we dated for 4 and a bit years. So there were different times, had different conversations, but we had lots of fun together. And I guess 4 things that we did talk about, amongst the many, that I believe that every young relationship, every dating season should talk about if they are intentional and looking to get married, are faith, finances, children, and family. You see, faith, Jordan and I both grew up in Christian homes. But we realize it takes a lot of intentionality to keep it that way and to grow and do that. And I guess I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with the Bible verse about being equally yoked. And the Bible directly references believers with unbelievers. But I think it applies just as much to Christian couples, where both of them are Christians, where both are believers. Because you may be both Christians, but it doesn't mean you're still equally yoked. Because you may have different callings, you may find yourselves on different paths God is calling you to, and if you're constantly in tension, it's going to be a really hard time. You see, if I was called to want to do missionary work and I felt God calling me into the mission space, but Jordan felt she was called to be part of the local church, we would probably be intentional a lot of the time because I'd want to be traveling and Jordan would want to be planted in the local church. And that probably wouldn't end up being a very happy marriage because we'd always be contending with each other. Although we both are focusing on our God calling, we'd still be in tension and it probably wouldn't be helpful. So that was one thing we talked about. Where do we feel God is calling us? Secondly, finances. Tithing, giving, saving, spending. See, in the relationship, surprisingly, I'm more of the spender and Jordan's more of the saver. I think Jordan has an avoidance of spending money almost. I say she can do something and she's like, nah, I better not. Even though it's important that she, like groceries. But I guess finances are an important thing to get on the same page about. Jordan and I, our finances are completely joint because we're building a life together. We're one family, we're one unit. Next, children. How many and how soon? Jordan and I got married during our third year of university. So children weren't on the immediate horizon, but we knew we wanted them eventually. So it was a discussion of when that might be and how many. And although they're not coming as soon as Pastor Tony and Kath would like, they are coming, but not quite yet. No announcement yet. And then finally, family. The Bible's clear. When two people are joined in marriage, two become one. They become one flesh. And I think a lot of relationships struggle because they don't quite leave the families that they came from and cleave to each other. Like Pastor Tony talked about this the other week. And I think that was a really big thing. Jordan and I had to have a conversation, okay? What does our family look like? What will our marriage look like if we get married? What are the decisions that we'll need to make? And I think we're living in the fruit of that. As Bailey talked about, the move to Melbourne, I guess the whole family ended up moving, but it was a decision that Jordan and I had to make as a family. And we were able to make that decision together because we'd laid the foundation and we fought hard while we were dating to be able to have these sort of conversations. John Maxwell says, pay now and play later. And I believe our marriage has been a blessing because during our dating season, we paid a lot. Pastor Tony made the joke about during a relationship, you should give each other hell. You should really push and really ask tough questions that each other are going to have to answer and figure out. And I think Jordan and I, we had lots of those conversations where we were really figuring out who each other were, what we stood for, what were our beliefs, what we wanted in life. And now we get to play in that. And we're now that we're married, we get to enjoy the fruits of the hard work during our dating season. Because strong marriages aren't built on chemistry alone, they're built on communication. And lastly, the last point that I want to highlight was that we learn to be completely committed. As I mentioned in Matthew, the Bible says that marriage is when two become one. You see, when we were married, we became a team. We didn't keep a score. We didn't try to win as individuals. We were now winning and losing as a family. We were losing or winning together. And I remember I caught up with Tony one time when we were dating, and it was probably pretty close to when we got married. And Tony asked me, hey, Nat, how would you feel if Jordan never went camping? And for most of you in this room who don't know me too well yet, camping is a big thing for me. My dad is an outdoor ed teacher back in Adelaide, and I grew up on all our family holidays with camping trips. I love it, rock climbing, kayaking, bushwalking, everything. And it's a huge part of my life. But as you may be aware, the Rainbows don't camp. I think I hear one camping story where they went to a caravan park and Tony ended up buying a TV so he could watch the cricket. I'm like, that's not camping. Unless you've got to dig a 1-foot hole to go to the toilet and you're not camping. But here they had a TV, and that's unreal. I could not imagine that sort of camping. But Tony asked me that question, not because it was really about camping, but it was about what are the things that Jordan might not be able to meet what I love? And am I happy to live with that? You see, Joel Osteen says, you'll never find someone that is 100% compatible. There will be 20% that you are not compatible, but it's all about being committed to focusing on the 80% that you are. And you see, Jordan has an incredible 80% that I absolutely love. But there's the 20%, like camping and not wanting to go, that I need to say, is that a negotiable for me? Am I happy for that to never happen? Or is it a non-negotiable? And luckily for me, it's a negotiable, so I'm okay if we never go camping. But you see, if Jordan said, I'm never going to go to church, that's a total different story. And it probably we wouldn't be where we are today. And so these are just three of the many things that I have learned being part of the Rainbow family and setting that foundation for Jordan and I to start our own family. But I'm so grateful for learning to date on purpose and setting those healthy boundaries and learning and that allowing us to learn to have real conversations and then learning to be completely committed to one another and focusing on the 80%. And see, all of these lessons allowed Jordan and I to set a foundation that would build a strong marriage on. And in saying that, I'd love to welcome up my beautiful wife to conclude our message this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I feel like I should first say, for those of you who don't know and are thinking, oh, what's the vibe then with Nathaniel and Mum? Well, what you've got to know is that Nathaniel had a crush on me when we were in grade 4. And so he asked me out and I was like, nope, we're just friends. And he was friend-zoned until we were in year 11. But throughout that time, he would give me gifts, like every birthday and every Christmas. And I justified it because I said, I told him how I felt and I made it clear I wasn't interested, but I will take a free gift. And so I was taking him and Mum was like, oh, that's so sweet of him. And like, she'd try and get me to she's like, oh, you should really get him something back. And I was like, why would I do that? Like, that's mixed signals. And she always said, well, Jordan, if he gets a girlfriend, you're going to miss out. And so then when it was year 11 and the day came and I realised, there's actually more to Nathaniel and I've got feelings for him. I can't deny it. And I was overwhelmed and I think because I was like, I've got feelings for this person I didn't expect. And oh my gosh, and now I'm worried because I'm like, but what if I've missed my boat? Like, what if now he's moved on? And I'm like really upset, which is something for me because I'm not like the empath that Beach is. So for me, crying is a big thing. So I'm crying and stressed. And the first and only thing Mum said to me was, well, told ya. To which I was like, I'm going to go talk to Dad. So much so and that's before we were together. Even yesterday, we quickly FaceTime them just to touch base and say, here's our thoughts for this message. And we're telling Dad, and Beej goes through hers, and Mum's like, yeah, that's good. Are you wearing my pants? And then I do mine. She's like, that's good. She's like, just careful how you phrase this. I was like, yeah, thanks, Mum. And then Nathaniel goes through his, and she's like, so good. Then it's like the next point. Oh, great. Oh, love that point. I was like, me and Beach are like, okay, thanks. She's like, and then double thumbs up. So it's all right. In case that's what you're worried about, Mum's team Nathaniel all the time. And we've started to realise he really is the favourite. But I don't know about you. I've really enjoyed this Bless This House series. For me especially, hearing Dad talk about the principles we grew up with as kids last week, it just took me back. Like when we were sitting on that front row and I heard him say first time every time, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like 5 years old again. I was like, oh my gosh, they used to say that all the time. Like I was there. And last Sunday night we had dinner with Mum and Dad, and Beach and I were just reminiscing on those things and just talking about all those little things that they would say that we grew up with. Like, remember this? And oh my gosh, yes. Remember this? And we were having a good joke about it. And Mum piped up and she said, I wonder if like the church thinks we were really strict parents. And maybe that was your takeaway from last week. I hope not, but I mean, it's a fair point, everything they shared. But I stopped and thought about it because I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that before, but I guess I could see where it's coming from. Like you heard last week about all the principles they brought up and the things that they would say and a lot of boundaries and how that shaped us. And I thought, oh, but I never felt growing up that I had strict parents. And then I was like, well, was that just me? Like maybe everyone else thought it. But then I was reminded of something I grew up with. A lot of my friends would say, oh, I wish I had your parents. And I asked Beej, and she said the same, like some of her friends. And I'd heard some of her friends say that because we would laugh about it later. And then I realised, well, what I know about kids, because I was one, is that kids don't say, I wish I had your parents about strict parents. Like I personally never did. Like, love them, we'll go over to your house, but I'm not saying that. So it made me think, well, they're not strict, but they are strong. And I think about these same friends who would say, oh, I wish I had your parents. But at the same time, I knew when they were coming to our house, they were sitting at the table to have dinner. And I had one friend say, oh yeah, we always eat on the couch, but I know if I'm at the Rainbow household, I'm sitting at that dinner table. And so they got that too. So they weren't strict, but they were strong. And it made me think, well, what's the difference? And for me, reflecting on my childhood and how we were raised, it came down to that they explained the why behind their decisions. You see, it wasn't simply because we said so, or because the Bible said so, or because the Bible said not to. There was clarity, consistency, and purpose behind their decisions. And their strength was balanced with kindness. So this morning, I just want to bring 4 of the things I've noticed that they did to build a strong home that's had a lasting impact on me going into adulthood. So the first is that they modeled what they taught. A question we often get asked as pastors' kids is, oh, what's it like listening to your parents preach? Which is a really nice Christian way of what they're asking is it true? Like, is he really like this at home? And I have had a couple of people directly ask me that. When I say, oh yeah, being a pastor's kid's cool, it's cool listening to his preach. Like, no, but like, is he like that at home? I was like, oh, okay, we're going there. But I had to stop and think about it and actually said yes. And it wasn't a PR response. I actually thought about it and said, yeah, to be honest, listening to Dad preach, sitting on the front row, it feels no different to the conversations we have at home. I mean, when I think about that, I was like, these are the conversations we have at the dinner table. These are the conversations we'd have driving to school. I mean, even reflecting on that, we grew up in Adelaide, and so for us, a drive to school was 10 minutes. And I think back, I don't know how we had the in-depth conversation we did in 10 minutes. I can't imagine what it would be like growing up in Melbourne and everything's like 40 minutes like away. Like we would have solved a lot of issues. But it was just that intentionality in the way they spoke. And it would just start with a comment about someone's day or just an observation and just the practical advice and wisdom they'd impart in us and the biblical truths without saying, oh, look, it says right here. It just came out of them. Yeah. And I noticed what they preached publicly matched how they lived privately. I saw them committed to reading their Bible, committed to prayer, to worship. But even more importantly than all that, they taught us that maturity isn't about never doing the wrong thing. It's about owning what you do when you do. You see, you may have heard of the Bondi story Dad shared where he was at Bondi Beach and he just lost his cool. He got so frustrated and he's yelling. And I can tell you how he's acted that out is 100% accurate. Like, even more so. Like, he's not playing it up for the platform. That was how frustrated he was and beyond. But it was what he did after, and we were really young. I was about 6 years old, or I think 8. Mitch was 6, and Beej was just a baby. And after that moment, he really owned it, and he apologised to us for it. And even hearing him share that recently, I remember that vividly. Like, you don't remember all your childhood stuff, but that moment, that day, I remember so clearly. And I think it's because what I saw. Yeah. See, I saw repentance, humility, forgiveness, and faith modeled in our home. Yeah. And that has had a lasting impact in my faith journey because I've seen it's real. This isn't a job. This isn't a platform for them. This is how they live. And it's inspired me in my faith journey. The second thing was that they protected our hearts. This is one that I think I haven't really appreciated until becoming an adult because I didn't notice it as a kid. But growing up, Mum and Dad had an intentional effort to protect us from church hurt and people problems. See, growing up as a kid, I thought the best of church. I thought, what a fun job being a pastor is. You don't have any problems. You get to hang out. It's like fun and like they like talking so that, yeah, great, they'll do that. And you see all your friends, like best job ever. And I remember I had a friend who was also in our church and we were very close in age and grew up in church together. But she just knew stuff and she'd always tell me about these issues with people at church or the things her mum knew or the things they had said or, oh, did you know about this? And for me, I was just like, oh, well, she has a lot of issues. Like, oh, my parents don't face that. They must have it really easy at church. But I realise now it wasn't that there weren't problems and that they didn't get hurt. It was that they intentionally chose not to pass it on to us. I mean, I was almost naive to a point that I genuinely thought, oh, there's no issues with church. But I'm so grateful for that. You see, Dad does this message about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And for those of you who don't know, they're 3 young men in the Old Testament who refused to bow down to the king at the time. So he sends them off to die by being thrown into a furnace. And the Lord protects them and delivers them from this, and they don't die. But the Bible says something, and it says they didn't even smell like smoke. And Dad preaches about that and the importance of not smelling like smoke, because the analogy is obviously if you've been around a fire, we know we can smell it. And that's something they've done so well. For me, I learned that it wasn't that they just didn't speak badly about people or that they didn't talk about problems. It was that they gave no indication that there was ever a problem. And which seemed as a kid like, oh, easy. I now realise how hard that would have been. And it wasn't them denying their feelings or not dealing with issues. It was them just choosing where to and when to and being very intentional around us and what was said. Because, I mean, we all know you can say something without saying something. You know, you can say, oh, no, I was really polite to that person, but your face kind of screwed up when you were talking to them, and everyone's like, oh, no, so you don't like that person. Oh, what would make you think that? But they just didn't do that. They were very mindful that everything about us says something about us, and we don't want to give our kids any reason to carry something they don't need to. Because unfortunately, I've seen the damage that can happen when kids are exposed to things too early and they don't have the maturity to handle it. For you, those of you who don't know, in 2016, we were on a youth camp and our youth pastor was struck by lightning and died in front of all of us. And that was a massive moment for our youth ministry team. And it really showed where people's faith was at. We all had journeys to deal with. But unfortunately, I think about that friend I mentioned who just grew up knowing too much. For her, that was too hard of a time. She really struggled and actually ended up not coming to church anymore and doing a whole bunch of things that you wouldn't have thought, because we grew up in church together and, we should be on the same page. And I think because her faith had been tainted so early, because she was carrying things at a young age she didn't need to and she should never have, when things got hard, when those challenges did come, she just didn't have the strength to stand it. She didn't have that wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, innocent faith. Yeah. So I look back and I realise how intentional that was and how sacrificial that was, but I'm so grateful for that protection. The third point is that they taught us little things that make a big difference. Some of the things that shaped us most seemed so small at the time. You may have heard of our rainbow 10 commandments when we were little. There was them, and they were very age appropriate, and they changed, like, thou shalt use their manners, which is please, sorry, thank you. Thou shalt look an adult in the eye, or thou shalt not stomp their feet, which is really good because that was actually for Mitch only. So it really meant Beach and I, we only had 9. So I was like, cool, great. Didn't like them, but we got there. But as we got older, it was less of those things and actually teaching principles, and this is why, and, you know, that coaching stage. And one that really stuck out to me was in my teenage years, especially around the age like the 13 to 16. Something Mum used to say to me was, Jordan, don't give your family your sloppy seconds, which sounds odd, but what she picked up an attitude in me, especially as a teenager. Like when I'm tired, when I'm grumpy, it's generally those who we're closest to that get the worst of us. And Mum had a principle of why should the people who give you the most get your least? And so that's what she was very big on. And as a child in that home, I needed to honour that and respect that and give them a better attitude because I have a lot to be grateful for and they've done a lot for me. But now in adulthood, I realise it wasn't just about teenager and living at home. It's actually Mum picked a fight for my future. She saw that one day I'm going to be a mum myself. I'm going to be a wife. I am a friend to people. And she thought, no, this is a principle you need to learn throughout your life. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that because now being married, I've seen the principle's still true. Yeah. It's just kind of changed. Now that I live with Nathaniel, he's the closer one. And I can honestly say that I haven't got it right. I would like to say, I've ticked it off, I've completed it, but I haven't, and I still get it wrong. But being taught that principle so early on, it helps me recognize it. It's helped us have conversations. It's helped me be more receptive if Nathaniel's brought it up and said, hey, babe, I didn't appreciate the way you said that. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, you're so right. But it's because I was taught that early on and Mum picked a battle, and I know that wasn't easy at times. And now I realise she could have just said, you know what, she's out of our house in a few years, she'll be someone else's problem. You know what, and then we'll be on the fun side, so we'll get the best of her then. But I'm sure Nathaniel's very grateful that she said, no, that's not okay. Because I have a job in raising you and I want you to be the best wife there can be, and I need to set that up well. And I'm so grateful for what that's done for us. You see, what seemed small at the time became significant now. And my last point, which just for time, I just want to quickly say, they celebrated life. See, Mum and Dad taught us that it's not just the big moments, but it's small moments and grabbing a hold of them that make lasting memories. They did so many small things for us. It was Monday night movie nights. Sometimes they'd pull us out of school and have a family day. We had intentional daddy-daughter dates. They celebrated achievements and recognised efforts. And they made a huge impact in me. It taught me that a blessed home isn't only built on big milestones, it's built in small moments that become lifelong memories. You see, as I conclude not only today's message, but this series, I understand that in this room, we've got people of all ages and in different situations. And so I just want to say, if you're a parent here, I really hope that this series has encouraged you to keep going. We need you to hold your line. I know it's probably not easy and we're probably not going to see it till one day, but we need you to do that. And so I hope you've been encouraged. I understand that there's also adults in this place who you may not have biological children. And I think of Fee, who was sitting here on the front row, and she's been such a blessing to our family. You see, she's been part of our family for as long as I can remember. And honestly, some of these foundational things have come from conversations with her. Sometimes she said the same thing Mum and Dad did, but it's just because it's someone else, it's just hit different. Or because she said it a different way, I've just understood it more. Or because she's close with us and she's seen something, she can say, hey, George, actually, no, the way you spoke to your mum right then, that's not okay. You need to apologise. You see, it takes a village to raise a child. So if you're in that position, we need you. The parents of this church need your support, and us as young people, we need your wisdom. And for the youth and young adults, I just want to say, be kind to your parents. Parents aren't perfect, but we have a lot to be thankful for. I'm sure there are things we won't understand until we're parents ourselves. But as you've heard here, we're not parents yet, but we've already started to realize, actually, there's things they've put in place, and here's how I'm living in the benefit of it. So I encourage you, think of those things, recognize them, and thank your parents. And do what they say, because they know. You see, looking back, what blessed our house wasn't perfection. It was a foundation of faith, responsibility, strong convictions, and genuine love. As children, we benefited from it, and as adults, we're so grateful for it. Now, as we build our own futures, marriages, families, we're discovering the greatest gift our parents could give us wasn't just a good childhood. It was a foundation worth building on.